refuse to accept this woman as a juror.
What do you want, a jury of morons? This woman is intelligent and unprejudiced.
She is prejudiced.
She isn't.
She is. Gentlemen, order.
Your Honor, I apologize.
Your Honor, I apologize to the court. Mr. Dale and Mr. Van Styne. The court is tired of this wrangling. The gentlemen have been 3 days selecting 10 jurors. The court insists that you select the remaining 2 jurors and proceed with the trial. Very well, Your Honor, then, as counsel for the defense, I accept this woman as a juror. And you, Mr. Van Styne?
I accepted her long ago, but my worthy young opponent, the attorney for the defense, objected to her.
Thank goodness you made them stop arguing over me.
Miss Pratt, you will raise your right hand.
You do solemnly swear that you will well and truly try the issues joined between the people of the state of New Jersey and your Beck Gordon, the defendant at the bar, and a true verdict rendered in accordance with the law and the evidence. Help you God?
I do.
Next.
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Livingston Baldwin Crane.
Mrs. Livingston Baldwin Crane.
Yes, I'm coming, Your Honor. Just a moment. Oh, Judge Fish, 1,000 pardons for my being late. But it didn't worry me, because I remembered that the Burtons had told you at the club last Sunday that they'd be sailing, and I was sure you'd understand I had to jump in. Do tell me whether Janet will be home in time to see Fred and Bertha. They will be so disappointed if she
My
doesn't
dear
make...
Mrs. Crane,
Yes?
you have not kept the court waiting. Now, if you'll please take the witness stand.
The witness stand? Well, Judge, I understood I was invited to serve on the jury.
Quite so, Mrs. Crane, but you must be examined.
Examined? Why, Judge Fish, it is true I've never served on a jury before, but do you doubt my mental qualification?
The court hasn't the slightest doubt of your mental qualifications, Mrs. Crane, but before you can serve as a juror, you must be accepted by counsel on both sides. And before counsel can accept you, counsel must examine you. Now, if you'll please take the witness stand.
With pleasure. Oh, Suzanne, bring my bag. I left it in the car.
Oui, madame.
That was thoughtless of me, but don't let it delay my examination.
Now, Mrs. Crane, as counsel of defense, I'm obliged to ask you a few questions, but in your case, there's scarcely more than a mere formality.
Thank you, Mr.
Dale.
Dale.
Now, tell me something, Mrs. Crane. Have you by chance read anything pertaining to this case in the newspapers?
To be perfectly frank, Mr. Dale, I've been so frightfully busy, I haven't even had a chance to glance at a paper in weeks. Was I supposed to read up on it?
You are not, Mrs. Crane.
Well, then I shall be the perfect juror. I don't know the first thing about it, except that it's a murder case, and I would not have even known that had Suzanne not told me.
Suzanne is your maid?
Yes, and she has a perfect passion for murder cases.
Have you discussed this case with Suzanne? That is, have you formed any impressions concerning the case?
No, I have not discussed it, and I have formed no impression.
Very well, Your Honor. The defense accepts Mrs. Crane as a juror.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Oh, thank you so much, officer.
Mrs. Crane, as attorney for the prosecution, I shall ask you just 4 questions. First, are you acquainted with the defendant?
Oh, so you're the defendant. How do you
Mrs.
do
Crane,
that?
you are not permitted to converse with the defendant.
Oh, my apologies.
Do you know her?
No, I have not had the pleasure, Mr.
Van Styne.
Van Styne? Why, a descendant of dear old General Van Styne?
Yes, did you know him?
Oh, hardly. The General Van Styne I speak of fought the American Revolution, and he and my great-great-great-grandfather fought side by side at the Battle of Princeton and the Battle of Monmouth. Oh, and I know this will fascinate you. At the Battle of Monmouth, both he and my great-great-great-grandfather helped dear old Molly Pitcher shoot the gun. Well, of course, then General Van Styne was only a corporal, but he was there helping Molly nonetheless. Those were stirring days for our ancestors, weren't they, Mr. Van Styne?
They were indeed, Mrs. Crane.
Mr. Van Styne, if you wish to examine Mrs. Crane further, please proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Then you do not know the defendant.
No, Mr. Van Styne.
Did you know her husband, the late Romney S. Gordon?
No, Mr. Van Styne.
Mrs. Crane, have you any prejudice against capital punishment?
Do you mean am I opposed to capital punishment?
Yes. Are you?
Mr. Van Styne, as long as the law, it should be enforced. As to my personal convictions, my duty to the state comes first, of course.
Now, tell me, Mrs. Crane, if you are on the jury, and after you've heard all the evidence in this case, you think that that woman is guilty of murder in the first degree, would you have any conscientious objections to her being sentenced to death?
Mr. Van Styne, if after I've heard all of the evidence, I am thoroughly convinced that Mrs. Gordon is guilty, well, yes, I should do my duty and convict her regardless of the sentence to be imposed.
Your Honor, the prosecution accepts Mrs. Crane as a juror.
Thank you, Mr. Van Styne.
Mrs. Crane, you will rise and raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that you will and will truly try the issues drawn between the people of the state of New Jersey and the defendant at the bar, and a true verdict rendered in accordance with the law and the evidence of the trial.
Yes, Judge, I do, Judge.
Mrs. Crane, it is the custom to address the court as your honor.
Oh, I really am very stupid. What am I supposed to do?
Take your seat in the jury.
And then what am I supposed to do?
You listen to the testimony of the witnesses.
Your Honor, are we jurors permitted to ask questions during the trial?
You may question the witnesses, but only when they are on the witness stand and with the consent of the court.
Thank you.
Madame, it was not in the car, so I had Jules drive me back for it.
Oh, thank you.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes?
will you please ask your maid to remain outside the railing?
Oh, by all means. Suzanne, this gentleman will show you where to sit. I'm on the jury now.
Madame, Jules wishes to know if we should wait or go home and can telephone.
Your Honor, do tell me how long the trial is going to last.
It may last several days if we ever get started.
Well, tell Jules to wait. I have a dinner engagement, but if I see I'm going to be late, I will send word.
Oui, Madame.
Your Honor, when does the trial begin?
As soon as you are seated.
Oh. How do you do? If you would be so good as to move over just a trifle, this trial cannot commence until I'm seated, so I really must sit if you don't object.
Hey, what the hell? Stop shoving.
Silence! Unbecoming language is not allowed in the courtroom.
All right, Your Honor, but tell this thing to stop shoving.
I wasn't shoving. I had to get over so she could sit down.
Silence! The court cannot allow the jurors to converse with one another. Mr. Dale and Mr. Van Styne. Yes, Your Honor. You gentlemen have taken so much time selecting a jury that the court will forego the customary recess to try this case immediately.
Very well, Your Honor. If Your Honor pleases.
Madame, I gave Jules your message, and he is waiting.
Thank you. Sit down. The trial is beginning.
Oui, Madame.
Oh, go on.
Your Honor, if Your Honor pleases. And you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. As attorney for the state, it is my duty to try the defendant, Yvette Gordon, on the charge against her. Murder in the first degree. The murder of her husband. And this is what I shall prove during the trial. First, I shall prove that Mrs. Gordon did murder her husband. She will claim that her husband shot himself by accident while they were struggling for the possession of a gun, a revolver. But I shall prove that she did murder him in cold blood. Second, I shall prove that Mrs. Gordon murdered her husband for what were to her good and sufficient reasons. He was rich and she wanted his money. That was why she married him, for his money. He was a retired financier, a retired Wall Street broker. His wife, before they married, was an actress, a chorus girl in a Broadway musical play. Her name, before she married, was Yvette Yvette, and as you have already doubtlessly surmised from the name, she is French. I mean, she was still a French citizen. Indeed, she had not even expressed so much as a desire to become an American citizen. Had not even made application for her first paper.
Your Honor, I object. The prosecution is deliberately trying to prejudice the jury by waving the American flag in their faces. The defendant's being tried for murder, not for being a foreigner when she married her husband.
Objection sustained. Thank you. The jury will disregard the prosecution's reference to the defendant's citizenship prior to her marriage. Proceed.
Mr. Gordon, after their marriage, brought her to live in his palatial country home near this charming city of Roseville. And he gave her every luxury money could buy. Cars, servants, beautiful clothes, everything money could procure, Mr. Gordon lavished upon his wife, the ex-chorus girl. But Mrs. Gordon was not satisfied with these gifts. She wanted all of her husband's money. So she murdered.
I did it!
Silence! Another reason Mrs. Gordon murdered her husband was she craved the amorous embraces of other men. And to satisfy that craving, she murdered her husband, the man to whom she had of her own free will been joined in holy wedlock. Those, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, those are the facts that I shall prove. And when I have proven those facts, when I have shown you that Mrs. Gordon did murder her husband, then I shall expect you, as 12 loyal American citizens, as 12 ladies and gentlemen of intelligence, impartiality, unswerved and unswayed by emotion, sympathy, and prejudice, I shall expect you to find her guilty of the charge against her. And I shall expect you to return from that jury room with that verdict of guilty, knowing that it means a sentence of death, but knowing also that despite that terrible penalty, you, as 12 jurors, have done your duty unflinchingly and in the cause of justice.
Your Honor, may I ask a question?
Mrs. Crane, you'll please rise when addressing the court.
Your Honor, my knowledge of the amenities of the courtroom is practically nil. Please don't hesitate to correct me and be a bit patient with my ignorance.
The court is most patient, Mrs. Crane. May I have a question?
Oh, this is the question, Your Honor. Well, Mr. Van Stuyt has just told the jury what he will prove during the trial. But really, Your Honor, if Mr. Van Stuyt can prove what he says he can, well, why bother with the trial at all? Why not just let him prove it and you sentence the defendant?
Mrs. Crane, one of the oldest and most sacred rights of the English-speaking world is the right to a trial by jury. A jury of our peers.
Yes, but really, Your Honor, if Mr. Van Stuyt can prove everything he says he can, and surely he can, otherwise he would not say so, well then, Mrs. Gordon, she hasn't a ghost of a chance. She's doomed before the trial even begins.
That is the purpose of the trial, Mrs. Crane, to find out if Mr. Van Stuyt can prove what he says he can prove.
If Mr. Van Stuyt can prove it. Well, really, Your Honor, aren't the lawyers in a case obliged to take an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
No, not the lawyers. Sworn to tell the truth. However, the jury must accept nothing until it is proved to be a fact.
Well, then, as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, Mr. Van Stuyt tells the jury that Mrs. Gordon murdered her husband, but we're not to believe a word he says until he proves it.
Precisely. Mr. Van Stuyt's address wasn't supposed to influence the jury, but simply give an outline of his case.
Oh, so that was it. I made the mistake of believing what he said. Thank you for telling me it wasn't true. Or that is not to be accepted as true until he proves it. And I appreciate your patience.
The court appreciates your appreciation.
Go on, please, proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Van Stuyt.
The prosecution calls Dr. James to the stand.
Dr. James?
Dr. James, will you kindly take the stand?
Your name?
Dr. Adam Quincy James Jr.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Dr. James, do you know the defendant, Mrs. Gordon?
I do.
called to their home on the night of April 1st of this year.
Oh, I was.
Who called you?
Mrs. Gordon. She telephoned me.
And when you arrived there, what did you find?
Mr. Gordon lying on the floor of their bedroom. Dead.
What caused his death?
A bullet. He had been shot.
Did you see a revolver in Mr. Gordon's hand?
No.
Did you see a revolver lying on the floor near his hand?
No. But I did see one lying on the table.
You saw a revolver lying on the table?
Yes.
How far was the table from Mr. Gordon?
About 10 feet.
Dr. James, as an experienced physician, would you say Mr. Gordon's death was instantaneous?
Oh, yes. He was shot in the temple.
Then it was humanly impossible for Mr. Gordon to shoot himself through the temple, put the revolver on the table, and walk 10 feet before he fell, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I did not say he put stones in timber. I said I picked it up and put it on the timber.
Silence! Your Honor, my client's under terrific nervous strain, however. I'll try to keep her from repeating the interruption.
See that you do, Mr. Dale. Proceed.
That is all, Your Honor. I am finished.
Dr. James, when you entered Mr. and Mrs. Gordon's bedroom that night, what was the first thing that she said to you?
Oh, doctor, he is dead. He shot himself.
Did she tell you how it happened?
She said that her husband was going to shoot her, but she grabbed his hand and accidentally shot himself.
What did you say?
Nothing.
Didn't you question her?
No, I'm a doctor, not a detective.
Yet you took it upon yourself to telephone for the police.
That is my duty as a licensed physician.
And you notified the police because you thought Mr. Gordon had been murdered, didn't you?
Your Honor, I object. I'm cross-examining the witness.
Objection sustained.
When you entered the bedroom that night, was anyone else there besides Mr. and Mrs. Gordon?
Yes. The maid.
What is the maid's name?
Snow.
Miss Snow?
Miss Evelyn Elaine Snow, if you want it all.
You seem to know Miss Snow quite well.
Oh, I ought to. I am her physician.
Dr. James, when you were in the bedroom with Mrs. Gordon and Miss Snow, did Miss Snow say anything to you?
Yes.
What?
Are you sure she is dead? He is dead.
What else did she say?
I told her I was sure, and she said, thank you.
Is that all she said? Are you sure he's dead? Thank you.
Yes.
How long were you there?
Until the police arrived?
Then you left?
Yes.
For the entire time you were there, Mrs. Snow never told you how Mr. Gordon was killed.
No.
And you didn't ask her.
No, I'm a doctor, not a detective.
Your Honor, I finished with this witness.
One moment, Doctor. Your Honor, may I ask a question?
You have, of course, permission.
Dr. James, I believe you said that you were the Gordon's family physician.
It was?
Well, then, would you be so good as to tell me, Doctor, or that is, tell the jury, in all the time you were with the Gordons, did Mrs. Gordon ever say anything to you that would lead you to believe she had ceased to love her husband?
Oh no. But she did say something that indicated her life was far from being happy.
And what did she say to you, Doctor?
She said she didn't like to live in New Jersey, but she had to because her husband wouldn't live anywhere else.
Well, then it wasn't her husband, it was New Jersey.
But Mrs. Gordon never told you she didn't love her husband, did she?
No.
And you never saw her do anything or heard her say anything to indicate that she didn't love him, did you?
No.
Dr. James, did you ever see her do anything that indicated she did love her husband?
No.
Thank you.
Behind us, Mr. Honor.
It was sweet of you to permit me to question the doctor.
That is your prerogative as a jury.
The prosecution calls Miss Snow to the stand.
Miss Snow?
Yes, just a minute.
Miss Snow, will you kindly take a stand?
promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Snow, you were in the home of Mrs. Gordon the night her husband met his death, were you not?
Yes, sir. I was.
How did you happen to be there?
I was employed as a maid.
Will you please tell the jury exactly what happened that night?
Time must I tell everything, sir?
Yes, the jury must have all the facts.
Very well. I was downstairs making Mr. Gordon some hot lemonade. It was awfully late. About 12 o'clock.
Was Mrs. Gordon at home?
No, sir.
Where was she?
In New York.
How do you know she was in New York?
Because she told me so after she'd returned.
Did Mr. Gordon say anything to you that indicated he did not know she was going to New York?
Yes, sir.
What did he say to you?
Well, when he discovered that she had left, he asked me if I knew where she had gone.
In other words, Mrs. Gordon ran away from her husband.
Oh, no, sir. She didn't run away from him. She just left without saying goodbye or where she was going.
And when was that? When did she leave him?
About a week before she shot him. I didn't shoot him!
Silence!
After you made the hot lemonade for Mr. Gordon, then what did you do?
I took it upstairs.
And then?
I began to take it to Mr. Gordon
Where was Mr. Gordon?
in their bedroom.
Did you take it to her?
No, sir.
Why?
Because I heard somebody talking to him.
Who was it?
Mrs. Gordon.
How do you know it was Mrs. Gordon?
I heard, well, the door of their bedroom was open, and I recognized her voice.
What was she saying?
Mr. Einstein, please don't make me answer that question. I don't want to tell.
What was Mrs. Gordon saying to her husband?
Well, she was awfully angry about something.
What did she say?
She was saying that it was none of his business where she had been or why she ran away from him. I never said that!
What else did she say?
She said that if he didn't like it, he could go to hell. That's enough!
Mr. Dale, the defendant must control herself. Proceed.
Where was I?
Mrs. Gordon had just told her husband to go to hell.
Your Honor, may I
No! Yes, but presently not now. Proceed.
I can't let it happen then.
You must, Miss Snow.
Then she said, and I'll send you to hell. I ran into the bedroom and I saw Mr. Gordon lying, Mrs. Gordon kneeling beside her husband with a revolver in her hand. And Mr. Gordon, he was lying there. He was dead. No, she's lying. She's lying, Your Honor. Please, listen to her.
My dear woman, this is a court of justice and all parties must be heard.
Then why won't you hear me? I didn't kill him, I tell you.
You can tell the jury what you wish when you're on the witness stand, but you must sit down and be quiet.
I can't be quiet because of these lies about me. How dare you do this to me? I will go to you.
The court is trying to be patient with you, but you must sit down immediately and remain quiet.
Very good, Your Honor. I'll be quiet.
Miss Snow. Before Mrs. was married, she was a New York actress, wasn't she?
Your Honor, I object! That is
sympathy of the jury.
That is an insult, and I won't take it from any man!
You'll take it from me in life.
Oh, you think so? Your Honor, I apologize for losing my temper.
You should.
Mr. Grant, will proceed with the witness.
Miss Snow, the last thing you told the jury was that you rushed into the bedroom and saw Mrs. Gordon on her knees with a revolver in her hand and her husband lying on the floor dead. Then what?
She didn't see me until I spoke. She just knelt there, saying, "Why did I do it? Why did I do it?"
And what did you say?
I said, "Mrs. Crane, what have you done? Why did you shoot him?"
And what did she say?
She said I shot him because I was tired of living with him.
Then what?
Then she begged me not to tell anybody that she had shot him. She begged me because he had shot himself.
Suicide?
No, accidentally, and that I saw him do it.
Then what?
Then she offered to pay me to tell that to the police.
She tried to bribe you to lie to the police?
Yes, sir.
How much did she offer you?
Any price I asked?
Did she say she would pay you then and there?
No, sir, when the estate was settled.
Did she tell you her husband had left his entire fortune to her?
Yes, sir.
Mon tous, forces if you keep your head on the bed. Madame, comment-vous, s'il vous plaît?
Mrs. Crane,
Yes?
you can't address the defendant. The court is able to cope with the situation.
Your Honor, I am quite sure the court can cope with any situation. But if it's perfectly agreeable, may I ask the witness a question now?
You have the court's permission.
Miss Snow, when Mrs. Gordon offered to pay you anything you asked for lying to the police, or rather, telling the police you saw her husband shoot himself, did you name a price?
Of course I didn't. I wouldn't lie, not even for her, no matter how much she paid me.
Your Honor, I wish to question the witness.
You have the court's permission.
You are a good girl, aren't you?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And you go to church, don't you?
Oh,
Your Honor, I object. That question is irrelevant and immaterial.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, I object to his objection.
The court has ruled. Religious activities of the witness have nothing to do with the case.
Mr. Dale, the witness is yours.
Thank you.
Miss Snow, you told us all that you saw Mrs. Gordon with a gun in her hand. In which hand?
The left hand.
Ah, the left hand. Now let me ask you something, Mrs. Snow. Have you ever seen Mrs. Gordon write a letter?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen Mrs. Gordon play bridge?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen Mrs. Gordon light a cigarette?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen her wind her watch?
No, sir.
Mrs. Snow, have you ever seen Mrs. Gordon do anything?
Yes, sir. I've seen her dancing with her boyfriend.
Miss Snow, Dr. James said that he saw that revolver lying on the table. Now you saw Mrs. Gordon put the revolver on the table after she showed you how her husband snatched out the drawer, didn't she?
No, sir. She put the gun on the table when she was asking me to lie, please for her.
You tried to make Mrs. Gordon pay you for not lying to the police, didn't you?
Of course I didn't. Are you calling me a blackmailer?
Why didn't you tell your little story of the shooting to Dr. James while he was there?
Because
Why did you wait till the police arrived and then spring it? Did
I
it really take you that long to invent it?
didn't invent it. I was protecting Mrs. Gordon. That's why I didn't tell the doctor how it happened. And when the police came, they
wanted Mrs. Gordon to pay you for not lying to the police, didn't you?
Your Honor, I object. He is calling the witness a liar.
She is a liar!
Your Honor, may I ask another question?
Very well, Mrs. Crane.
Miss Snow, now how long had you been with the Gordons?
Almost ever since they were married. And it breaks my heart so to have to tell all these things. Mrs. Gordon was so good to me. And I'm so sorry for her.
Oh, you hypocrite! You snake! Miss Snow, tell me, was Mr. Gordon kind to you? Did you like Mr. Gordon?
No, Mr. Gordon was cross with me, but Mrs. Gordon was always kind and friendly.
Then you were not fond of Mr. Gordon?
No, but I was very fond of Mrs. Gordon.
Miss Snow, did Mrs. Gordon engage you through an employment agency?
Your Honor, I object. That question is irrelevant and immaterial.
Objection sustained.
My apologies, Mrs. Crane.
That is all.
Mr. Dale, do you wish to question the witness further?
No, certainly, but later. I believe she's exercised her imagination enough for one sitting.
Thank you, Miss Snow. Your Honor, the prosecution rests, reserving, of course, the privilege of calling other witnesses in rebuttal.
Your Honor, I make a motion that this case be dismissed on the grounds of insufficient evidence.
Motion denied.
Your Honor, I make a motion that the court take a brief recess. I had no idea the prosecution would address this case so soon. Consequently, most of my most important witnesses aren't here.
Mr. Dale, this case has already been unduly delayed and the court has a full docket. Motion denied. Proceed with the trial.
Very well, Your Honor. Your Honor pleases. And you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in his address to the jury at the beginning of this trial, the prosecution told you what he would prove. Now, I shall not waste your valuable time in telling you what I shall prove. I'll prove it. The prosecution told you at a great length and with sophomoric emotion the defendant murdered her husband. But the defendant herself will tell you with her own lips exactly how her husband came to his death. And every word that she utters will be the truth. Were it not the truth, I would not be defending her. I never defend a liar. The prosecution has placed me at a great disadvantage by arresting this case so soon. I'm not intending to put Mrs. Gordon on the stand till much later in the trial. It was very clever of the prosecution. However, this is not an exhibition of cleverness. This is a court of justice. And the defendant, Mrs. Gordon, is fighting for justice with one and only one weapon. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Now, Mrs. Gordon, will you please take the stand?
Your name?
Yvette Bourdon.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, and it is the truth and not a lot of lies.
Mrs. Gordon, please be seated.
Now, Mrs. Gordon, tell the jury exactly how things happened that night. In your own words, your own way.
When my husband was going to shoot me and I was trying to stop him and he shot himself. I never touched that gun. It was in his hand all the time. And I never asked her to die for me. When she came into my bedroom, I was kneeling beside my husband, crying and saying to myself, oh, why did I do it? Oh, why did I do it? Meaning, why did I run away from him? Not why did I shoot him? And she said, oh, so you killed him, did you? I said, no, I didn't shoot him. He shot himself. I rushed to the table and was taking the gun up to the drawer. And I ran to him, begging him not to shoot me, trying to get a hold of the gun so he couldn't. And it went off and killed him. She said, you'll have a swell chance of making the police and a jury
she's been confined in a jail cell for many weeks and is now battling against an unjust accusation of murder. But she will be able to go on with the trial, I assure you.
Your Honor, I object. That speech was a direct bid for the sympathy of the jury. Of course she was kept in jail. Where do you suppose they would keep her? And that sob scene. You told her to do that for the jury.
No, I cried because I had to.
Certainly, you had to for the jury. Your Honor, I object.
Your Honor, may I ask another question?
Very well, Mrs. Crane.
Thank you. Mrs. Gordon, you said your husband was trying to shoot you. He was. And why was he trying to shoot? Well, he thought I had been untrue to him, but I hadn't. I tried to tell him so, but he would not listen to me. He thought I ran away from him to be with another man, but I didn't. I ran away from him because I had to. I could not live with him any longer without a vacation. What do you mean without a vacation? Well, we have been married over a year, and in all that time I had not been away from him once. He kept me in that house like a prisoner. He wouldn't go anywhere with me, and he wouldn't let me go anywhere without him. And whenever my friends came over to see me, he insulted them. I mean, he insulted my boyfriends, and he was so silly and disgusting with my girlfriends that they wouldn't come over anymore. And there I was, alone with him, way out here. And all my friends back in New York. And all I could do was sit around and talk to him, and he didn't know how to talk about anything except himself. Votre mari est-il plus âgé que vous? Oui, madame.
Your Honor, I object.
Et quand il était joli de moi, c'était mon père. Mais donc, votre parole est nous qui vous n'osez pas. Oui, madame, j'en prends un témoin d'eux, et l'ancien vieil berger, je les livre tout.
Your Honor, I object.
An apology.
Your Honor, have I done something irregular?
Mrs. Crane, you must ask your questions in English.
Oh, my apologies, but the question was rather personal.
What's the question?
Well, I asked Mrs. Gordon if her husband was older than she, much older.
And you reply, Mrs. Gordon?
I said, yes, madame, and when he was jealous of me, he was a beast.
Thank you, Mrs. Crane. Thank you for bringing up that point. Mr. Van Styne, the floor is yours.
I also thank you, Mrs. Crane. Thank you for asking the defendant that question. Now we know that she had another reason why she wanted her husband out of the way. She hated him. He was old. He was a beast. Thank you, Mrs. Crane. You have helped my case. Mrs. Gordon, before you married Mr. Gordon, you were an actress, were you not?
I was.
And you knew your husband was rich, didn't you?
Yes, but I did not marry him for his money.
You wouldn't have married him if he had been poor, would you?
No, I was making enough to support myself, but I could not support a husband.
Then you did marry him for his money. And when you couldn't get his money, you made up your mind to get it all by killing him, didn't you?
No, I didn't kill him, I tell you.
Then why did you come back to him in the middle of the night when you knew all the servants in the house would be asleep? Why didn't you come back during the day?
Because I knew my husband. He was always cross with me, but he was less cross late at night. And I thought if I were to come home late, he would listen to me without making a scene. But the minute he saw me, he acted like a crazy man. He was crazy. He was insane with jealousy, and that is why he tried to shoot me.
You knew your husband had left everything to you in his will, didn't you?
No, he never told me anything about his will.
Then why did you tell your maid he had left everything to you?
I didn't. I never told her that. It was a lie. Your Honor, may I ask another question?
Mr. Van Styne is examining the defendant.
Mrs. Crane has my permission.
Thank you. Mrs. Gordon, did you engage your maid through an employment agency? No, madame. I got her from Chauncey. Chauncey? And who is he? Chauncey Gordon? He is my husband's nephew. Your husband's nephew? Oui, madame. So then Chauncey knew your maid? Oui, madame. Chauncey gave her to us. Gave her to you? Oui, madame. When we were on our honeymoon, we visited Chauncey and his wife. And Evelyn was their maid. And while we were there, Evelyn and I became quite friendly. And she asked me if she couldn't come and work for me. And I said I would love to have her come work for me if it was agreeable with Chauncey and his wife. Well, been married before?
Your Honor, I object. The question is irrelevant.
On the contrary, Mr. Van Styke, most relevant. I am trying to determine whether Mr. Gordon had any children by a former marriage.
Objection overruled. Proceed with witness, Mrs. Crane.
Thank you. Had your husband ever been married before?
Yes, madame. Twice. But both wives divorced.
And were there any children?
No, madame.
Was Chauncey your husband's only relative?
Your Honor, I object. That question is irrelevant and immaterial.
Mr. Van Styke, if you would please be patient. I'm trying to determine whether Mr. Gordon had any relatives besides Chauncey.
Your Honor, I object. That has nothing to do with this case.
It has everything to do with the case. If Chauncey was his only relative, then Chauncey was his only heir before he married Mrs. Gordon.
All of which has nothing to do with this case. Your Honor, I object.
Objection overruled. Proceed with witness, Mrs. Crane.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Gordon, was Chauncey your husband's only relative?
Yes, madame.
So then if you are convicted and executed, Chauncey will inherit everything.
Your Honor, I object.
Your Honor, Mrs. Crane's question.
It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a declaration, a despicable insinuation of conspiracy. Your Honor, I object. I object.
Objection sustained.
But, Your Honor,
Objection sustained. Mrs. Crane, be seated.
Your Honor, I have a question.
Very well, the jury may ask it.
what church do you belong to?
Your Honor, I object. The religious faith of the defendant has nothing to do with this trial.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, I protest. You are discriminating against me.
Mrs. Gale, proceed with the defendant. There's never been through with this case. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my instructions to the jury on the points of law involved in this case. You will now retire to the jury room. And there you will wait. And in light of that evidence alone, you will determine the innocence or the guilt of the defendant at the bar. This is Yvette Gordon. Your procedure in the jury room is quite simple. The foreman of the jury, the first juror chosen, will preside over your deliberations and will take the votes or ballots of the jurors from time to time until the verdict has been arrived at. You will then return to this courtroom, and the foreman will inform the court as to the verdict arrived at by the jury. You'll be escorted to the jury room by an officer of the court. He will lock you in, and you will remain arrived at before the jury has been escorted by the court. And mark you, no juror shall be permitted to leave the jury room. That is the law. And the penalty is imprisonment or fine or both. In cases of this character, you will often be found when you are asked how you reached the verdict. You are under no obligation to anyone whatsoever to disclose the nature of the proceedings. In conclusion, the court would like to reiterate, nor can the court reiterate too emphatically, that you must reach your decision on the evidence and on the evidence alone. And the court reminds you again of the oath you took as jurors, that you will render a true verdict in accordance with the law and the evidence, so help you God. The violation of the oath is an offense punishable by imprisonment. Officer, conduct the jury to the jury.
Yes, Your Honor. This way, please.
Madame, wait, please. Please don't kill me. Please don't arrest me. I didn't kill him, I tell you. I didn't do it. I didn't do it, madame. Please wait. I didn't do it.
Pay attention, everyone. As foreman of this jury,
I bet this jury could tell very many interesting stories. Comedies, tragedies, and what have you.
I repeat, attention, everyone. As foreman of this jury,
Wait a minute, Foreman. I ain't out of here yet. It's against the law for the jury to talk about this case till they're all by themselves and locked in.
Hurry up, Loxton. I want to get out of here.
Yeah, me too. I've got a heavy day tonight. It's getting late. Me too, officer. You know, my husband and I, we've only just been married.
All right, ladies, I'm working as fast as I can.
Be seated, everyone.
Hey, Scotty. Sit over there. I want to sit here. Now listen, folks.
If you need anything or want me for anything, just call me. Be sitting right outside the store all the time you're in here. That's what I'm here for. To wait on you and to make sure you don't get out.
Mr. Theodophilus, be seated.
Sure, but I want to sit here. Come on, Scotty. Beat it over there.
Sorry, Mama, but I'm sitting here and I'm very comfortable.
Presley, we're home for a verdict. I've been home since this trial began, and I want to get out of here.
Listen, you old crab. I'll give you $1 for that, see?
All right, give me that $1 first.
That is trash. That is bribery.
I beg your pardon, missus, but it's no bribery. It's a legitimate business transaction. I got something, he wants something, and I'm selling something in.
Got it. Don't give it an argument. $1. I've kept the hell out of you.
I object. I protest.
Sorry, lady. You're all wet.
Hey, don't sit down. Mr. McCabe, return that money.
I will not.
Now, wait just a minute. I've been on the jury before, and I know what a foreman is. You don't have to boss of this outfit like the judge was. All you do is tell us when to vote and keep score. Outside of that, you're none better than the rest of us. Sit down, Scotty. Don't let him make you take back that $1. What are you trying to do? Give the old Bert Hart feeling.
Mr. Beale, Mrs. Haight, be seated.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I may not be the boss of this jury, but I am foreman. And my duty as foreman is to see to it that everything is done in an orderly fashion and according to law. I don't know if that jury will be foreman, Mr. Theodophilus, but when I am foreman, and I won't stand for any insults or rowdyism. The conduct of some juries is a disgrace to the communities, but the members of this jury will behave like ladies and gentlemen.
Bravo. Bravo.
Now, as foreman, I call for your verdict. Is that woman who murdered her husband guilty or not guilty? Miss Pratt, I delegate you to act as official teller and collect the ballots.
Thank you, Mr. Presley.
Excuse me, buttonhead Presley, but the last jury I was on, we cut out this ballot and stuff and voted out loud. We got through quick. Let's carry it with the judge, too. He said he didn't give a damn how we voted, just as long as we came across with a verdict.
Very well, Mr. Baum, I accept your suggestion. The jury will vote by word of mouth. That gives me the first vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a man without fear or prejudice. I listened to every word spoken at that trial and took a solemn oath to render a true verdict in accordance with the law and the evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, just as sure as my name is J.J. Presley, that woman is guilty.
Mr. J.J. Presley, guilty.
Juror number 2, Mr. McKay, how do you vote?
But why she killed when he was rich? That, Mr. Presley, is what I couldn't figure out.
How do you vote? Guilty or not guilty?
Oh, I think she's guilty. But I just can't understand it killing a husband who has money.
But you do think she killed him and you vote guilty.
Aye.
First name, Mr. McCabe.
I'm Drew McLaren McKay.
Juror number 3, Mrs. McGuire.
Sure, and she killed him. The hussy. She was trying to be a peacock when the Lord made her a crow.
And you vote guilty?
But then I'm saying she killed him. That means I'm voting guilty, don't it?
But you must say guilty or not guilty.
Guilty.
First name, Mrs. McGuire.
Bridget.
Juror number 4, Mr. Beale, how do you vote? Guilty or not guilty?
Well, yes and no.
What do you mean yes and did she kill him or didn't she?
Well, she did kill him. I'm gonna convince Tony.
But do you think she murdered him?
Well, yes, she didn't murder him, but I believe she was somewhat justified.
Don't beat around the bush. Did she murder him?
Yes, she did.
Then you vote guilty.
Yes. First name, Alonzo.
Juror number 5, Mrs. Dace,
Mary, no matter what we did to Mary.
Mrs. Dace, do you vote guilty or not guilty? Did she kill her husband or didn't she?
Oh, yes, she killed him. But as I say, I can't imagine myself killing my parents.
Then you vote guilty.
Yes, you think she's guilty, don't you?
Mrs. Dace, guilty.
First name, Mrs. Dace. Dixie.
Juror number 6, Mr. Daisy.
Mr. Foreman, with your permission, I would like to rise and make a few remarks before I cast my vote. All my life I've been taught to respect, indeed revere womanhood. From earliest infancy, I have placed woman opalescent and resplendent. To me, it was on the age of wisdom. The defendant at the bar is a beautiful young woman. She has the charms of Helen of Troy, the grace of Diana, and the allure of Cleopatra. But, unfortunately, you must judge her by the evidence, and the evidence against her. So, with profound regret, I vote guilty.
Your first name is Spencer, isn't it?
Yes, Spencer B., real estate and insurance.
Juror number 7, Miss Tate.
I can't make a speech, but I feel sorry for that woman. And I live to be 100 years old. I'm never going to serve on another jury.
Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty. First name, Cynthia.
Juror number 8, Mr. Braun.
She had a lousy lawyer. Best lawyer in the world, couldn't say her. The evidence was against her. I vote guilty.
Juror number 9, Miss Mixer.
If you ask me, I think she's dumb. She was this pretty and didn't have the brains to wait till her old sugar daddy died of old age, so she had to pick some.
Miss Mixer, will you please talk English? Guilty or not guilty?
I'm telling you, guilty. My gosh. You know your own language?
Order!
First name, Miss Mixer. Romanian spelled with a Y-E.
Juror number 10, Mr. Theodopolis.
Sure, she bumped him off, but where she went wrong was using a gat. Should have done a clover so they couldn't have hung it on her.
Then you vote guilty.
Yeah, I told you once.
First name,
Tony.
Miss Pratt, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty. I knew it the instant I saw her. She had murder stamped all over her.
well, you must pardon me, Miss Cratford, for differing from you, but there was nothing whatsoever in Mrs. Gordon's manner to suggest murder. Your Honor, it is quite unnecessary to ask me how I vote. I'm absolutely convinced of Mrs. Gordon's innocence. Why, she's the most innocent woman in the world, and we hold her life in our hands. And I'm astounded that any of you could think for a moment that she committed that horrible crime. Oh, yeah? It's incredible to me that anyone with the slightest gleam of intelligence could sit and listen to the evidence for 3 days and then sit here and deliberately vote that woman guilty. How dare you insinuate that I have no intelligence? It is incredible to me that 11 sane men and women could be taken in by, well, a particularly obvious adventuress like that maid, and the cheap harangue of an egotistic lawyer. When a child listening to the testimony you heard would have known that Mrs. Gordon is innocent. Please, my dear jurors, I'm perfectly willing to answer your questions, but you must not hurl them at me. One at a time, please.
Order!
My dear jurors, I can't understand a word you're saying. One at a time, please.
Mrs. Crane, you're entitled to your own opinion in this case, but you have no right to call the rest of the jury children because they don't agree with you.
You ask me, you've got a hell of a nerve calling us out. Who do you think you are calling us a bunch of nuts? I could tell you nothing of the kind, I'm sure.
And who told you that hussy didn't murder her husband?
Well, no one particularly told me, but if you look at the evidence... Yes, the evidence. Now listen. We listened to the evidence for 3 days. Part of it was intended to prove Mrs. Gordon guilty, and the other part to prove her innocent. Now, she could not be both, of course. It is possible that some of the witnesses may have, well, forgotten that they had sworn the jury room, we furnish a little example. However, it is not so little to Mrs. Gordon. My God.
Get down, Mr.
Crane. Sure, cut the big words and talk sense.
Order, order!
I'm hungry, Your Honor. I want to eat. Where do I get an order? Listen, I'm hungry too, and I want to get out of here.
Be patient, ladies. We'll be out here by supper time. If you would only stop interrupting. Now, Mrs. Crane, 11 of this jury voted Mrs. Gordon guilty. You alone voted not guilty. As foreman, I ask you to explain your vote.
Why, there's nothing to explain. I know she's innocent.
You know she's innocent?
Positively.
But how do you know it? What proof do you have that she's innocent?
My instinct proves it.
Your instinct?
Yes. You know, women's intuitive faculty that it's often more reliable than man's reasoning powers. Yes, one in whom persuasion and belief had ripened into faith, and faith become passionate intuition. I think that answers your question, doesn't it?
Presley, call the officer.
What?
Call the officer and tell him to tell the judge to dismiss us. I was on a jury with a woman like her once. We never did get a verdict. She held out to the end.
Now,
We might as well quit right now. When they start pulling that highbrow stuff, nothing nor nobody can change their minds.
Now, Mr. Brom, I realize perfectly that you've had a great more deal of experience in jury matters than we have, but I also know that you are a highly intelligent and fair-minded man, and so will grant me the privilege of voting according to my conviction. And it is my conviction that Mrs. Gordon is innocent.
But Mrs. Crane, we can't remain here forever. If we don't reach a verdict within a reasonable amount of time, the judge will dismiss us. In this case, we'll have to be tried all over again. And that costs money. And the taxpayers have to pay it.
No, Mr. Presley, I can't vote guilty because of the taxpayers.
But Mrs. Gordon is a guilty woman, and the evidence proves it.
I'm glad you refer to the evidence, Mr. Presley. Now, as I said before, we listened to the evidence for 3 days, and I can hardly believe that after hearing the testimonies that you heard, well, that you would not see that she's innocent. My God!
Mr. Foreman, I object to this young woman's disgraceful conduct. You may not agree with Mrs. Crane, but she must be insulted.
Listen, you another crack like that, and I'll punch you right in the nose.
Now, gentlemen, please.
Order! Sit down, everybody!
Now,
Dave, what the hell do you think you are insulting her?
And tell her to stop insulting Mrs. Crane.
Order!
Mr. Daisy, I appreciate your chivalry, but we must not take these little interruptions personally. Someone once said that the majority is always wrong, and if that's true, then the minority, which I happen to represent at the moment, can find satisfaction in the fact of being right. I'm hungry as well, now that you mention it.
I'm getting the officer. Officer!
Silence!
Go ahead, kid. He can't stop you. She's got as much right to call the officer as you have.
Officer! Officer, come in here.
What's the matter? Somebody fighting?
No, but I'm hungry enough to fight. I want something to eat. That's me too, officer. Oh, I'm so starving.
All right, ladies, but you gotta eat here.
What do you mean, gotta eat here?
Yes, ma'am. This is a murder case. You gotta eat right here till you're through. Just tell me what you want, and I'll have it fetched to you.
All right.
One at a time. What do you think I am, a microphone? Now listen, folks. One at a time, one at a time.
Attention, everyone, attention. The jury will order by number.
Wait a minute. Whoever's gonna order one, so I'm gonna sit down. All right, better sit. All right, shoot. J.J. Presley.
1 piece of apple pie and 1 bottle of milk. Certified.
Is that all?
Yes, that has been my supper for 35 years, and I have never had a sick day.
Mr. Presley.
Next, number 2.
1 Porto steak. A good one.
Rare, medium, or done?
underdone, and everything that comes with it. And ice cream for dessert.
All right, Andy. What kind of cream? Pistachio?
I might as well see the County's paying for it.
It doesn't. It used to, but this new administration's cutting expenses. You pay for it.
I pay for it. Oh, just give me a cup of coffee and a donut.
Next, number 3.
That's enough yourself, officer. I'll have corned beef and cabbage, and I don't mean a Scotch open either.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Next, number 4. Number 4. Where are you? See you now.
The question they mean is to see the fish got his gold lord.
Bill! Are you ordering or ain't you?
Oh, nothing, thank you. Oh, you must have something if it's only orange juice. Very well, orange juice. Officer, I'm Mason, but don't you think you could excuse me just for long enough to have dinner with my husband? You know, we've only just been married
Lady.
now.
No. You gotta stay right here till you're through. Just nobody eat.
Oh, I don't know. Anything.
Mrs. Dave, make up your mind.
Oh, excuse me. Just a little tea and a muffin, and Officer, where's the telephone?
There ain't no telephone. It's against the law to have one in the jury room.
My goodness, being on the jury is like being in jail. Mrs. Dave. Yes,
Next, number 6.
Oh, let's go. Double dough. Dinners for 2.
2.
Yes, 2 of you, please. Brad.
Next, number 7.
Next, she's all set with a boyfriend. Orange juice.
Roast beef, medium, and lots of it.
Oh, Mr. Ross.
Finally at last.
Show it to her, Smith. This is on me.
Fine, but don't blame me if you drop dead. 1 lobster, some caviar, fruit salad, and plain steak.
Listen, I'm feeding you, not the whole damn jury.
What do you think I'd order? A peanut? When I eat on a gentleman friend, I eat. I wasn't in show business for nothing.
Stop your fooling. You was never in show business.
It was so.
Oh, are you on this stage, dear? Why are you an actress?
Sure. Meisenheimer's chorus.
Oh, that is a very nice chorus.
Sure, and I'd still be working for my old man to make me sell movie tickets in front of the movie house.
Oh, yeah? Think it too. What she ordered. You can't scare me that way, kid. I just love to go feeding.
Good.
Next, number 11. Number 11.
Oh, put lamb chop and some pineapple.
Next and last.
Oh, yes, officer, I'm next. You'll pardon me one moment, I'm sure. This is my order. And if you would be so good as to do me another great favor and give this note to my chauffeur. For my maid, of course.
Certainly, Mrs. Crane. Glad to do it. I'll phone him to come right down.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I'll hustle that grub into you just as quick as I can.
Do that before you can drag me out here in a box.
And bring her some electric fans. It's hot as hell in here.
Listen, Tony. This is a jury room, not a hotel.
Attention, everyone, attention. We want to carry on our deliberation and try to reach a verdict so that we may go and enjoy the evening at home.
Sure, make it snappy. I want to spend the rest of my life in this film. Got a heavy day tonight. Get late.
Now, Mrs. Crane, why do you think Mrs. Gordon is not guilty?
Now, Mr. Presley, why do you think Mrs. Gordon is guilty?
The evidence, Mrs. Crane, the evidence.
Yes, but what evidence? What part of the evidence?
All of it. The testimony of her maid the first day alone was enough to convict her.
Yes, but Mr. Presley, her maid was not telling the truth.
She was. I watched her every second she was testifying.
Well, I admit she may have fooled you. Well, she was a diabolically clever young woman. But she was lying. Oh, God
believed her because I knew she was telling the truth, and I knew Mrs. Gordon was lying.
And how did you know that, Mr. Presley?
The way she acted, she was nervous as a cat. She couldn't keep still a second, and liars are always that way.
You may be correct, but in Mrs. Gordon's case, her nervousness was a racial characteristic.
What do you mean, racial characteristic? You know that I dressed up and talk American?
Well, I apologize, Miss Mixer. I thought I was talking American. Now, Mr. Presley, Miss Gordon was nervous because she's French. Of course. Rubbish! Miss Pratt, have you known very many French people?
No, and I don't want to. France is a land of equity and vice. Every French husband has a mistress, and every French wife a lover. And I have never seen a French woman yet who could be trusted out of your sight when it came to men. If she is a French woman, she is a bad woman. That is my motto.
Now wait a minute, Mr. Pratt. You're a lady and I'm a gentleman, so I can't call you a liar. But anybody who says that about a French woman is a liar.
Order, Mr. Braun, order!
Mr. Presley, I demand an apology.
Try and get it. I married a French girl when I was over there with the AEF, and I know damn well she isn't playing around with any other man.
Stop your fooling.
Listen, big boy. I'll lay you 150. I can take your wife away from you the first damn night.
Which one?
This one, he has a gun in his pocket.
Search him.
Oh, no, you don't.
Officer, arrest that man!
I knew it, you big stick.
Where is it? Show him.
Here. It ain't phony either. Got it from the chief of police. The enemies are after me.
All right. You can't keep it in here. No guns allowed in the jury room. Is anyone else in there toting weapons? If you are, come across.
Well, I'm not. I can't speak for these people, but, well, I'm certainly not armed. No,
All right, then behave yourselves. If anyone else wants to fight, call me. What I'm here for.
Mr. Braun, we have you to thank for that ridiculous episode.
Thank yourself, Miss Pratt. You started it. Panning my wife.
I never mentioned your wife.
Same thing, you panned another Frenchwoman and she's a fraud.
Order, Mr. Braun, order!
Lay off me, will ya? You haul order at me and you let her get away with murder.
Well, Mr. Foreman, now that we've had that brief and diverting intermission, may I suggest we take another vote?
You've decided to change your mind.
No, but I should appreciate another opportunity to vote.
Well then, ladies and gentlemen, I call for the second ballot. Miss Pratt, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. President.
I vote guilty. Mr. McKay?
Guilty.
Mrs. McGuire?
Guilty.
Mr. Beale?
Guilty.
Mrs. Days?
Guilty.
Mr. Daisy? Guilty. Ms. Tate?
Guilty.
Mr. Braun?
Not guilty! How do you like that?
As foreman of this jury, I demand to know why you changed your vote.
Because I wanted to.
Mr. Braun, you sworn to decide this case on the law and the evidence.
Listen, lady, don't tell me how to vote. I've been on a jury before and I can vote any damn way I please.
Order! Order!
Well, you're a nice message, right? What'd you make him sore for? Now we'll never get out of here, and I've got a heavy date. A heavy date with my hottest sweetie.
Yeah? Who is he?
What do you like to know?
Are you going to continue with the vote, Mr. Foreman, or not?
Yes. Miss Mixter, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty. We keep her still.
Mr. Theodopoulos? Guilty. Miss Pratt?
Guilty.
Mrs. Crane?
Not guilty.
Say, how are you planning on keeping me? The only proof of what to you.
That is true, Miss Mixter. And I believe you said you had something to do. What was it? Oh, yes, a heavy date. Personally, I think a heavy date is the most fascinating thing in the world. It's certainly a much nicer thing for a girl to keep them than to stay in this stuffy place. But unfortunately, Mrs. Gordon is waiting to see what we're going to do with her life.
Mrs. Gordon murdered her husband in cold blood.
She did not do anything of the kind. Well, I insist on stating my interpretation of the entire case. The moment I heard that name, Chauncey Gordon, I was astounded that that utterly stupid and inefficient lawyer, Mrs. Gordon, didn't recognize the clue and follow up on it. Well, everyone knows that Chauncey was Mr. Gordon's only heir before he married. What could be more natural than Chauncey wanting to separate Mrs. Gordon from his uncle? Now that maid lied, and she lied to the jury because she knew that if Chauncey inherited everything after she had obliterated Mrs. Gordon, then she would be rewarded sumptuously. Now isn't there an idea there? Isn't it illuminating?
Your interpretation of this case is ridiculous. No one would send an innocent person to his death for money.
Don't you read the newspapers? Mrs. Crane, your theory lacks common sense. We are here to talk sense.
Sure, but the Chauncey stuff is what sense.
I am talking sense, but you people don't seem to understand sense when you hear it. I'm giving you good reasons for believing that that maid was lying, and you won't even discuss them.
That maid was telling the truth, and anyone with an open mind would know that. But you haven't an open mind. You won't listen to reason. You won't listen to the evidence. You won't listen to anything but your own narrow prejudice. You call it instinct, but I call it prejudice.
Now, Mr. Presley, Mrs. Gordon tells the truth. You believe her and I don't, so I'm prejudiced. Rubbish! She was acting.
Of course she was acting. She was an actress when Mr. Gordon married her, and Van Styne proved it.
On the contrary, Mr. Presley, Van Styne proved that she was a chorus girl. But if you'll remember, he did not prove anything against her character. No, you don't know anything against chorus girls, do you?
No, and I don't have to. Everyone knows what a chorus girl is.
Oh, yeah? Mr. Presley, have you known very many chorus girls personally?
No, I am a clean-minded, law-abiding, self-respecting citizen.
Well, so am I. I am a clean-minded, law-abiding, self-respecting citizen just like you, with the same kind of New Jersey citizen. But I happen to know several chorus girls, and these particular girls have married into very good New Jersey families, and they are excellent wives and excellent mothers. I don't believe it. As an officer of the Roseville Society for the Surveillance and Suppression of Vice, I did a thorough study of the subject, and every chorus girl is a catwoman, and every fallen woman started falling on the stage.
That's a damn lie. I was on the stage once, and I was a cat, and I didn't fall. And I know chorus girls right now who are just as straight as you, and maybe straight.
Order, Mr. Order!
Now, Mr. Presley, we're going to be just as orderly as we can, and of course, this nice young lady's going to be the most orderly of all. I realize perfectly that Miss Pratt had considerable opportunity to study people in her upland work. I'm glad you appreciate that fact. Oh, yes, I'm sure in your wonderful field, Miss Pratt, you've come to know the various classes fairly well. And I'm sure that when you've had a bit more time to study the chorus girl department of life, you'll find that it's just like every other department of life. No fundamental difference. Like not a particle, light and shade, as it were.
First see that, not a chance. Enough to exert your buzzer.
Order, Miss Mixer. I won't allow you to insult Miss Pratt.
Insult her? She's lucky I don't cut her throat.
Now, Mr. Foreman, may I suggest we take another vote?
No! Yes, and I vote not guilty.
That goes for me too. What do you mean insulting my pal?
Call the officer! Officer!
What are you gonna do? Have him arrested? Change my mind?
What's the matter? Another fight?
No! I want the judge to come here. I want him to know what's going on in here.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, allowed in here. No one come in here with me.
Then I'll go to the judge.
No, you can't go. You can't leave this room till the judge says so. Nobody.
Then you go to the judge. Tell him that Miss Mixer and...
Lady, don't say another word. Against the law for anyone on the jury to tell anyone off the jury anything about anything. Can't even tell me. That's nothing left for you folks to do. Find out amongst yourselves. That's the law.
Mr. Presley, I object. Order them to stop out the studious exhibition. Now, Miss Pratt, you're young. We used to be young, too. Well, there's nothing pretty about it. A certain elemental, barbaric splendor.
stop. Mr. Theodophilus, stop that dancing.
What's the matter? Ain't we doing it, Sucha? Come on, Tony. Mr. Presley, let them alone. We're not here to censor the pleasures of the jurors. We're here to decide the fate of an innocent woman who's being accused of murder.
But she isn't innocent, and you know she isn't.
Now, Mr. Presley, there's no need to yell.
You're blocking the ends of justice in this case for purely personal reasons.
How interesting.
Mrs. Crane, you're a rich woman.
Thank you.
Mr. Gordon is a rich man.
Yes, very.
Van Stuyt proved that.
You are right, Van Stuyt did prove that, and you know, I was particularly impressed because it was the only thing that Van Stuyt did prove. Now, what's the next link in your chain of incrimination?
Mr. Gordon was a member of the 400 Club of New Jersey, and so are you.
I didn't even know there was a 400 in New Jersey.
You did know Mr. Gordon, didn't you?
Were you asleep when I was being examined for the jury?
Oh, no, I wasn't asleep. I heard you tell Van Stuyt that you didn't know Gordon, but I think that you did, and that you're trying to save his wife from the electric chair because you're glad she killed him.
Naive, but a gorgeous illumination of that quaint little mind of yours.
But you did know Gordon.
No, I did not know Gordon.
Then why are you trying to save Mrs. Gordon?
Because she's innocent.
Prove it!
I don't have to. You do. The judge said so. The judge said the burden of proof rested on the prosecution.
Van Stuyt did prove her guilty.
Not me. Mrs. Crane, what are we going to do? I simply must get home and look after my husband. Now, Mrs. Days, I understand how eager you must be to get home to your husband, but it isn't possible even for that reason that you'd have me allow Mr. Presley to browbeat me into sending an innocent woman to the electric chair, would you?
Mrs. Crane, I have tried to treat you like a gentleman. I have reasoned with you. I have pleaded with you to vote on the evidence, but you refused, and now you deliberately insult me by accusing me of trying to browbeat you. That I will not stand for, Mrs. Crane.
Mr. Presley, what are you going to do?
I'm going to send word to the judge that this jury is hopelessly deadlocked and for him to dismiss us. Officer, come in here. And believe me, Mrs. Gordon, Mrs. Crane, the next time Mrs. Gordon is tried, she will be convicted. After what has happened here, Van Stuyt will see to it that no narrow-minded, harebrained, stubborn little society woman gets on the next jury.
Stop talking, everybody. Your grub's here.
Never mind the food. You tell the judge.
The judge ain't here. He's gone home. Now listen, everybody. Ordinarily, I'd make them wait to do that grub out there, and I'd bring it myself. There's so darn much of it. I'm gonna let them bring it. But only under one condition. You folks don't mention this case while they're in here. Don't speak to them.
Don't we have to pay him?
Yeah, and you're gonna pay me and I'll pay him afterwards.
Fine, what's the split? 50-50?
There ain't no split. Alright, folks, touch it in. Right down here. Put it on the table and then beat it. And don't talk to the jury. You ain't allowed in here. But I'll learn how to do all that stuff.
Where's mine?
Where's mine? Don't get in a hurry. Everybody's name's on what they've ordered.
Officer, come here, please. Would it be possible for you to bring me a small table?
Certainly, Mrs. Crane. Good idea. There's the roof this table for everybody. Never seen such a hungry church.
Thank you.
Hey, Slim, what'd the Yanks do? They win? What'd the babe do? Any homers?
Slim! Cut that out. I told you not to talk to the jury. Mrs. Crane. Here's your table.
Thank you. Right here will be fine. My God, the size of that lobster.
Someone made a mistake and ordered me a shrimp.
Mrs. Crane, that was thoughtful of you getting us our own table. Now we can have a nice conversation all by ourselves.
Mr. Daisy, I'm very sorry, but this table's not for us. It's for Miss Tate and Mr. Beale. I have an idea that they'd, well, like to dine by themselves.
Of course, Mrs. Crane, but Bar's going to eat with me, aren't you?
Oh, Mr. Daisy, with the greatest pleasure. Let me whisper something. To the day of my death, there is one thing I shall never forget. I shall never forget that in all this awful rabble, there was one of my own kind.
So I
not speak our language.
You're right, they don't.
Oh, those plates look frightfully heavy. Shan't I help you carry them?
Oh, a little hot, but I won't be holding them forever.
Well, I suppose we must join the others.
Where thou leadest, I shall follow.
Oh, Miss Tate, Mr. Beale, this table's for you.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Crane, but we're only having orange juice. You and Mr. Daisy take it.
Thank you, Miss Tate.
Mr. Daisy, I'm sorry, but this young lady is mistaken. I took it upon myself to see that you and Mr. Beale would have something more than orange juice for dinner. Bring the chairs down, Mr. Beale. Why, who's going to take care of you if I don't?
Thank you, Mrs. Crane. That was so incredibly sweet of you.
Why, not at all. After all, you must be taken care of. You are here in the cause of justice.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, just think of the truly awful responsibility that rests on your young children.
Yes, Mrs. Crane.
Do you realize it? Oh, yes, indeed I do. Good. Oh, my God.
Mrs. Crane, here's
Yes?
your order. When I gave it to the cook, I told him it was for you. Be careful with it. He was so darn careful he forgot to give it to the waiters. It just comes. Well, where'll I put it?
Right down here, please.
Oh, Mrs. Crane, that's so thoughtful of you. I don't know how to thank you.
Why, not at all. Who will take care of you if I don't?
Officer, I want you to telephone the judge. And telephone the judge, tell him this jury can't agree for him to dismiss
Oh,
her.
no, officer, don't do that. Mr. Preston, we've just begun.
I am foreman, do as I say.
No, officer, don't. No, Mr. Preston, please, we've just begun to discuss the evidence.
Telephone the judge.
All right, you're the foreman. Yeah, hold on. Good God, who's that for?
Have you everything you wish, my dears?
Yes, thank you.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes?
here's the rest of your order. Those waiters are cuckoo with the heat. They forgot this too.
No, there must be some mistake. Well, as long as it's here, I suppose it can't go to waste. What is it?
A steak. What a steak.
Oh, a steak?
No, Miss Crane, don't misunderstand me. I'm not asking you to give me the steak just for you're not to waste it. You can.
Oh, by all means. Officer, give the steak to Mr. McKay with my compliments, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Crane. It's a small coincidence, what you might call gold relation, but I was very merely ordering a steak myself. It's a good thing I did. I was about to have a cup of coffee and a donut, but I'll do justice to this.
I'm sure you will. And you heard him order that steak. I object. First you attempted to drive those birds with food, and now you're doing the same with Mr. McKay.
Lady, will you please stop talking until I get out of here? I mustn't hear anything you say.
Thank you, officer. Officer, will you telephone my husband that I won't be home for dinner?
No, I've already told him. He was here an hour ago asking for you.
He was?
Yes, he told me to tell you your cat to come back.
Hey, Bill. Bill. Bring me some lunch. I'm out.
Me too, Bill. Camels.
And bring me some plum balls and some gum.
Yes, and candy, officer. Candy for the ladies and cigars for the gentlemen.
And buy that candy at my store.
Oh, have you a candy store?
Oh, I've got 10 candy stores. Me and my brothers.
Officer, have you phoned the judge?
I haven't left the room yet. You want me to phone the judge?
Yes.
Mrs. Day, that is so fortunate. I heard you had lost your cat.
Mrs. Crane, we're not here to discuss cats. Now, as foreman of this jury, I demand to know, why did you order that food? Are you bribing them to vote not guilty?
Why, Mr. Preston.
Yes or no, are you?
No, most emphatically no. I protest against that outrageous accusation. Why, Miss Tate and Mr. Beale are young. Youth must have nourishment. It cannot subsist on orange juice alone. In regards, Mr. McKay, yes, I did order him that steak. See, I told you. But not as a bribe. I ordered that steak for Mr. McKay out of reasons of purest sentiment. He's a Scotchman, and most of my ancestors are Scotch. Rubbish! I have
I'm a man of woman.
And I knew it the moment I saw you.
You know, from the moment I saw you, I knew that you were a lady.
How nice, how very, very nice.
Geez, that must be a good steak. You'll be kissing her in a minute.
Oh, such vulgarity.
He said her, not you.
Oh, Mr. McKay, you tell me what part of Scotland you're from.
Mrs. Green.
When you're finished chewing, of course.
I come from the best part of Scotland, Balmoral.
Balmoral? Why, what a coincidence. You know, Mr. Daisy, the finest gardener I ever had was from Balmoral. Yes, and what beautiful roses he grew for me. Why, every year his roses won the blue ribbon.
Bah, blue ribbons are nothing to me, Mrs. Green. I've grown roses that were worn by me.
Well, then you are a gardener, too.
Aye, and her most gracious Majesty Queen Victoria herself wore spraying me roses in her diamond jubilee.
What an honor, Mr. McKay, what an honor.
You know, Mrs. Green, I could grow just as good roses for you, too, if you were to engage me as your gardener.
Well, I should love to engage you as my gardener, Mr. McKay, but of course I cannot. That is not now. Then I would surely be accused of bribing you, if you know what I mean.
Mrs. Crane, I object. All of this talk of roses and gardeners has nothing to do with the verdict. We are here to discuss the evidence.
Yes, Miss Pratt, but how much more brilliantly we can discuss the evidence if we just dismiss it from our minds for the time being. Why, nothing is so salubrious as harmony when one dines. Don't you agree with me, Mr. Davis?
Tired of Mrs. Crane. Harmony's been the secret to,
Well, then who could ask for a more delightful company than our scintillating friends gathered here? Oh, and of course our collegiate neighbors have you everything you wish, my dear. Yes. Why, Mr. Beale, what a beautiful book. Are you an author? Oh, I think that you are. You write poems.
Well, yes, Mrs. Crane, I'm making poetry my life's work. But this is not mine, it is Shakespeare.
Oh, my sweet swan, Avon, forever our best beloved.
Oh, he's one of my favorites too, Mrs. Crane.
Well, read us something, Mr. Beale.
Sure, read something.
Yes, go on from where you are. Why, poems of mature genius interpreted by youthful genius. You know, my friends, I think this is beginning to seem more like a salon than a jury room. Go on, please.
Oh, well, I might be interested in Benedict in the church. Is he not to prove the height of a man that has slandered, scorned, and dishonored my kinswoman? Sweet hero, she is wrong. She is undone.
Oh, that I were a man! Well, that I any friend would be a man for my sake, but manhood is melted into courtesy. Valor into compliment, and he is now as valiant as Hercules, that only tells a lie and swears it. Oh, that I were a man, I would eat his heart in the marketplace. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth like the gentle rain. Oh, beautiful! Nice music! Oh, and beautiful! Why, such candid and passion. You have an exquisite appreciation. Well, don't you think so?
Yes, I can listen to him forever.
Mrs. Crane, I object. We are not in Greenwich Village. We are here to discuss the evidence.
Get out with the evidence. Forget it. Order! That's what I said in it rides. I don't want to hear the evidence mentioned again until I'm through eating.
Well, I'm through.
So am I.
Well, I'm not, and I don't want to hear it mentioned until I've had my coffee and a smoke.
But Mr. Braun, the taxpayers of this county aren't paying us to smoke. They're paying us to reach a verdict, and I intend to do my duty. Attention, everyone, attention. We will now have another ballot. I vote guilty. Mr. McKay?
Guilty.
See? I told you she bribed him.
She did, Nick. When we voted before, I was like myself. Man can't think clearly on an empty stomach. Now that I've replenished changed my inner mind. I can see my error. I vote guilty.
Mrs. McGuire!
Stop yelling at me. I haven't sold my vote. I vote guilty.
Mr. Beale.
Not guilty and don't accuse me of selling my vote for food. Mrs. Crane has the soul of the vote. And a soul like that can't be wrong about Mrs. Gordon.
Mr. Beale, we took an oath to judge this case on the evidence, not on Mrs. Crane's soul.
Stop talking, everybody. I'm coming in.
Did you get my gum?
Officer, have you told the judge now?
Yes?
And?
He says you must be crazy.
What?
That's what he said. Then he followed me up and phoned him. He says I have to know by this time that he never discharged the jury in a murder case, but they've been out 2 days and 2 nights.
2 days and 2 nights?
Yes, ma'am. 2 days and 2 nights.
Mrs. Crane, we have you to thank for this.
Why, Mrs. Davies, this is delicious.
Oh. Mrs. Crane, I object. You should be ashamed of yourself. We'd have been home long ago if it hadn't been for you.
Stop talking, everybody. Mrs. Crane, here's your bags. They just come. Where I put them?
No, over there will be fine, officer, and thank you for giving my note to my chauffeur.
Don't mention it, Mrs. Crane. Always glad to oblige a lady.
Mr. Officer, are we expected to stay here all night?
You will if you don't reach a verdict.
But I'm not prepared. I didn't bring anything with me.
Don't blame me! Why, you can't think of everything. Why didn't you use your head like Mrs. Crane?
Mrs. Crane, did you know we were staying here all night?
Yes, dear.
And how did you know it? Did you bribe the officer to tell you?
No, I knew it the same way I know Mrs. Gordon's innocence. My instinct. Oh, dear, don't you worry about tonight. I had my maid send something for you, too.
Oh, Mrs. Crane, that was so sweet of you.
Not at all.
Gee, that's swell, but what about me?
And you, too. Everyone is amply provided for.
Why, thank you, Mrs. Crane.
And now, Mr. Foreman, shall we take another vote?
No, you're bribing the jury and I'll send you to jail.
Mr. Presley.
And don't think your money will save you. Rich men are going to jail every day for bribing juries, and I will send you to jail.
Now, Mr. Presley agrees with me beyond words how you speak to me so harshly.
I've never had the pleasure of meeting you, but I've always heard that you were a leader in the civic life of Rosedale. I've always highly respected you as a man of breadth and mission, a man to whom the right...
Good God, woman, now you're trying to bribe me.
Why? How could you even say such a thing? It is a thought sacrilegious. I wouldn't try and bribe anyone on the jury. I wouldn't even dream of attempting to. Why, Mrs. McGuire, do you hear that? It's an Irish cameo.
I hear it. Isn't it wonderful? Do you fancy Jake?
Don't wake the jury. I want you to do something for me. I want you to get me some cots.
Cots.
Yes, cots for these poor people. And they can't sleep like this.
All right, maybe I can borrow some from the jail.
Thank you.
Officer?
Oh, Mr. Presley, I thought you were sleeping.
Officer, she asked you to do something. What was it?
Mr. Presley, that's not necessary.
What did she say to you?
She asked me to get some cots.
Cots?
Yes, cots for the jury. And I said maybe I can borrow stuff from the jail. I'll have them here for tomorrow night.
Thank you. And thank you for telling Mr. Presley. I doubt if you would have believed me.
Don't mention it, Mrs. Crane. Always glad to oblige a lady.
Mr. Presley, I didn't wake you, did I? Now that everyone's sleeping and things are quiet, suppose we talk things over just between ourselves. I'm sure we can come to an understanding.
No, I don't believe in secret diplomacy. I talk only in the presence of the entire jury.
Mr. Presley, that's not secret diplomacy. It's just an informal discussion between two people. That's modern diplomacy. Ultra-modern. I'm sorry that I haven't an underslung pipe to offer you, but will you join me in a cigarette?
No, I don't smoke.
But you will discuss it, won't you?
No, now stop talking to me and let me go to sleep.
Mr. Presley, it grieves me beyond words to have you speak to me like this. Why, all my life I've heard that J.J. Presley, prominent grocer, was a leader in the civic life of Roseville. Why, as I said, I've always highly respected you as a man of breadth and vision, a man to whom the rising generation could look as a symbol of the perfect citizen. But hearing you speak like this, well, I'm sorry to say it, but I must. I found you are, well, a stubborn, self-righteous bigot.
Mrs. Crane, if you want me sleeping here, I'll go somewhere I can sleep.
I don't care where you go, I'll follow you.
You can't come in here. You're not allowed.
I won't get it. There, darling, I sure you're the door.
What's the trouble? Taking another bullet.
Go back. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I frighten you? I'll take a little. We've been laughing for so long that I'm dreadfully nervous. Oh, I am so sorry, Cynthia. And yet, I'm glad. I'm glad that we've been locked up here together. I never knew that 2 days and 2 nights could be so short. When we are free, that is when we are off this jury, you will, won't you, Cynthia? Well, I didn't wish to serve on this jury, and Mater didn't wish me to. She said everyone on here would be so common. But Uncle Horace said that it would do me good to rub elbows with the backbone of the nation, and that if I were to be a poet, a real poet with a big message, that I would need to know all sorts of people, and I finally consented. And it's been the most wonderful experience of my life. A glorious adventure, and all on account of you. You will, won't you, Cynthia? Matter doesn't wish me to, and she insists that I wait until I'm 30 so I don't make a mess of my life. But now that I've seen you and known you and have been with you, I can't wait, Cynthia. I simply can't. You will, won't you? Won't you? Alonzo, what are you talking about? Won't I what? Marry me, elope with me. All my life I've been dreaming of you, thinking of you, seeing you in the leaves and the trees. And every poem I ever wrote, you were with me. The girl of my dreams. My inspiration. Alonzo! Only quit it, will you?
What's the matter? Did I kick you again?
But you wiggled around and you woke me up.
Sorry, baby. I was dreaming of you. Dancing. Cheating to me. Even when you saw it.
What are you trying to do? Surprise me?
Listen, kid, I could wear a ball and chain for you and like it. What do you say? Will you slip it on me?
Listen,
listen, if I could put a bowling chain on you, it would be around your neck and you in the river.
I'm kidding, man. I'm not so weak. You had me calling for help the minute I saw you. 2 days and 2 nights of looking at you and talking to you and sleeping by you. Listen, kid, when we get off this jury, I'll put a ring in my nose and a ring in your finger. And you're going to bleed me from now on. What do you say, are you on?
You're the cream of my coffee. You're the salt in my soup. You're the steam in my... Oh, Tony. Stop it! Stop that noise! How dare you wake me when I'm all tired out?
Say, what the hell's the matter with you? Go back to sleep.
Tell my head to sleep yet. Stop it! Stop your fighting! We're to a rag!
Stop that noise! How can a man sleep with all this racket?
Oh, goodness sake, son of a gate.
Now we've taken a little ballot.
No ballot, we're through balloting.
Then why are we staying here, Mr. Presley? Don't ask foolish questions. We are staying here because we have to. The judge won't dismiss us.
Yeah, and you're to blame for it. You and your Mr. Presley. You're holding us out for guilty, you pig-headed mule.
Don't you call me a mule.
You're that lawyer, a fat-headed jackass.
Get him out.
You should be ashamed of yourself. All of you. Mr. Presley and I are right, and you know it. That woman is guilty, yet you insult us by holding out against us. And in the cause of justice.
Justice, your foot. Both been 8 to 4 not guilty and has been for 24 hours.
And 48 hours ago, the vote was 11 to 1 guilty. And we'd had a verdict of guilty if it hadn't been for that Mrs. Crane. She's the one that's keeping us here.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you feel chipper after your night's rest. Mr. Presley, what ballot are you taking now?
No ballot, I'm through.
Oh, have you resigned your position as foreman?
I have not. I'm still foreman.
Well, then we must keep right on voting. After all, it is our duty. Is everyone here?
Daisy ain't.
Hey, Daisy, you're blocking the ballot.
And stay where you are. There isn't going to be any ballots.
Oh. Pardon my appearance, Mrs. Crane. I thought I would have time to shave before the battle began.
Why, not at all, Mr. Davis. This is the After all, this is the third day of the battle, and history's repeating itself. All the great battles of the world were won on the third day.
Is that so? You won't win this battle. I'll vote against you until they carry me out on a stretcher.
Oh, no, you won't. If you don't vote not guilty on the next ballot, you're not going out of here on a stretcher. You're going out that window and I'll throw you.
Now use violence.
But listen to me, Mr. Crane.
No violence.
Miss Crane, let me sock in. That's the only thing. I want to get out of here. I want to go fishing.
And you are going fishing, Mr. Brown.
But wait, if I have to stay here much longer, I'll be too tired to fish. I'm all being worn all out.
My dear comrades, we're all tired. We're all worn out, but we're all rags. We're all wrecks. But remember, we are here to save an innocent life, and we must go on to victory.
Mrs. Crane, we can't. Mr. Presley will hold us here against us, and I'm all in. No fool, and I'm a washout.
Now, friends, remember, as Napoleon said, or was it Shakespeare? Anyway, remember the enemy is just as worn out as you are, so keep right on fighting.
Don't fool yourself. I'm good for 100 years.
So am I.
I'll tell one. I'm good for 1,000 years.
Officer, come in here. Officer.
Were you calling me?
Yes, I was. Breakfast for the jury, please. My compliments.
Yes, Mrs. Crane.
Coffee, plenty of strong coffee.
All right, Mrs. Crane.
And a nice breakfast for yourself, too.
Yes, Mrs. Crane.
Officer!
Mrs. Crane. Shh. Mrs. Crane. Do you know how many more days and nights are going to be here?
No, officer. We shall
want Mrs. Crane to route me.
Are you free now?
Be my guest.
Then phone the judge and tell him to discharge us, because this jury can't agree.
Officer, present Judge Fish with my compliments and tell him the vote is 8-4, and the prospects of a verdict growing brighter every minute.
Do as I say.
Officer, suppose you give the judge both messages?
All right. I've been waiting on juries for 20 years. I don't take no chances.
20 years.
I'm on to everybody.
Well, shall we go on with the ballot?
No! Yes! Go ahead, Miss Crane. I was on a jury where the foreman refused to take any more ballots. You know what we did?
What?
We told him to go to hell!
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Attention, everyone, we will now take another ballot. Ballot number 123. Mr. Brock, will you act as ballot?
Sure. Wait a minute, Mrs. Crane. I'm foreman of this jury, and if there's any balloting done, I'll do it.
By all means, Mr. Presley, I have no desire to usurp your privileges.
Attention, everyone, attention. We will now have another ballot. I vote guilty. Mr. Pegg.
Same as before. Who's guilty?
Mrs. McGuire. Wake her up.
Mrs. McGuire, wake up. How do you vote? You know very well how I vote. Same as before. Not guilty.
Button up your overcoat. I just saw something I don't want to see.
Silence.
I object. She has no right to play musical instrument in the jury room. We are not here to entertain ourselves. Where did you get that thing?
I had my mother send it to me in my hat box. Well, with it, I shoved my toothbrush. Mrs. Crane, do you object?
Not at all. I enjoy it. I think voting to music is delightful.
Good. Takes someone like you to appreciate my art.
Presley, about this lather's drawing on my face.
Mr. Beale.
Not guilty.
Mrs. Days.
Not guilty.
No! No, you can't! I won't let you serve us! No!
I'm sorry, Mr. President, but I can't do it any longer. I've held out just as long as I can. I just got back from my honeymoon and I got put on this darned old jury. I want to go home. I want to marry.
Stop that noise! We are voting!
There's something to keep me busy. The great key won't play like go myself.
Don't go in there! We are voting!
You want me, page me.
Mrs. McLean, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for that disgraceful costume.
She's jealous of the kid's shape. I'd like to see you in them pajamas.
Mr. Daisy, how do you vote?
Not guilty.
What?
Mr. Daisy.
Mrs. Pratt, Mr. Presley, perhaps I should explain why I changed my mind.
You most assuredly should, Mr. Daisy. We all know why. Mrs. McGuire and Mr. McCagg and Mr. Beale and Miss Tate changed their votes. They were right, but you...
Oh, shut up.
Beckon, I was not right. Mrs. Crane isn't giving me this elegant outfit. She's only lending it to me. And you heard what she said what she said when I asked her if she didn't want to hire me for her cook. She hired you. She meant yes when she said no. She did not.
Silence, Mrs. McGuire! Mr. Daisy has the floor. Now, Mr. Daisy, why have you changed your vote?
Because I changed my mind.
But why the evidence hasn't changed?
Quite so, Mr. Presley. My interpretation of the evidence has changed.
But why?
Because I've changed my mind.
Mrs. Crane speak with you while the jury slept.
Yes, but not about the case, of
What
course.
did you talk about?
Well, we spoke of the most fascinating of all subjects of conversation, ourselves. Oh, go on, please. Mr. Daisy, you have the floor.
Before Mrs. Crane went to sleep last night, she said something to me. What she said, I can't repeat it, was rather personal. What she said convinced me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Mrs. Crane's instinct is infallible.
So now you're following Mrs. Crane's instinct.
No, but having been convinced that her instinct was infallible, I began to reconsider the evidence. I went to sleep last night with the evidence and Mrs. Crane's illuminating remark, and as I slept, my subconscious mind sifted the wheat from the chaff, the truth from fabrication. And when I awoke, I had my verdict. Not guilty.
Nonsense! You changed it because Mrs. Crane stabbed you. Rats! You did! You deliberately stabbed him while we were asleep.
That's what you did.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, but in all fairness to myself, I did not deliberately set about to convince Mr. Daisy of the infallibility of my instinct. Why, he discovered it himself, quite by chance. Last evening, when the jury was sleeping and Mr. Daisy and I were chatting, he remarked that he was a realtor, and I said without thinking, and of course without design, yes, and you are an honest realtor. He admitted it, but he was surprised I had called you honest. He said everyone he'd known before in his life thought of realtors as thieves and rascals and robbers of the worst sort. Well, then he asked me why I thought he was honest, and I told him my instinct told me he was.
You say she didn't influence you.
She didn't. She convinced me, and from now on, I'm voting not guilty.
Well, Mr. Daisy, you can vote not guilty, and the rest of the jury can vote not guilty from now until doomsday. But that won't help Mrs. Gordon one jot or jittle, because I'm voting guilty till the end, and one vote will prevent her acquittal. So you can keep right on vamping and bribing Mrs. Crane, but the best you can get for Mrs. Gordon is a new trial, and that means conviction.
What, still talking, are you? Say, you haven't got a piece of catgut in your pocket, have you? I busted one of my strings.
No, and if I did, I wouldn't give it to you.
Mrs. Crane, with your permission, I'd like my share.
Oh, by all means, Mr. Daisy. Oh, perhaps you other gentlemen would like to shave too.
No, we're not here to shave.
But, Mr. Presley, a shave is so refreshing. It may help you to think clearly. You know that both of my husbands, yes, both of them, did practically all of their thinking with a shaving brush in one hand and a razor in the other.
That's the only time they could think with you for a while. Good God, woman, don't you ever stop talking. Mrs. Gordon is guilty, and you know it, but you're so damn prejudiced.
Mr. Presley! Why, I've been wonderfully patient with you, but when you start cursing me, I won't have it.
Mrs. Crane!
Stop! So you can speak to me like a gentleman, don't address me.
Ugh.
Listen,
You keep out of this!
Oh, no, I won't keep out of it. Who the hell do you think you are, the lady? Why, if I'd been Miss Crane, I would have knocked your false teeth right down your kidney.
Young woman, wait a minute, Presley. Don't strike her. Let me speak with him. You can't get anywhere by threatening him.
Oh, he'll get somewhere all right, enough to hell in there in an ambulance.
Now, Mr. Presley, you're wrong about Mrs. Gordon. And here's why you're wrong.
Take your hands off me!
But, Presley, listen to reason.
Take them off me, I say!
Oh, Presley.
Take them off!
You want me to sock him?
Well, that's what you call it, but only as a last resort. We must not let it hold out to the judgment. This trial must not be dismissed. Why, heaven knows who or what they'll get on the next trip. You know that I do not believe in using violence, but if he absolutely refuses to listen to reason, there's only one thing left to do, and you must do it.
Good.
Miss Mixter, come here, please.
Yes, Mrs. Crane.
She wants me to sock him.
I don't believe it, and you don't believe it. You're saying that because Mrs. Crane said it, and you'd sell your soul to be her guardian.
Presley, that's an insult. Get out of somebody!
Darn right, Eddie! Make him take it back or beat the daylights out of him!
Oh, you're not that here. You sell your soul to be her cook.
Darn, who do you think you are shaking your fist at me?
Why you?
Mr. Presley, can't you control yourself?
Sure, let him go, Mrs. Crane. I'm just itching to mop the floor with him.
I don't blame you one bit, Mrs. McGuire, but we all must be patient with each other. We've been cooped up here for so long that Mr. Presley's not himself. He's very tired and nervous.
Oh, no, I'm not. It'll take more than you to wear me out. I'm right, and right makes might, and I'll fight you to the finish. All of you!
Mr. Presley, we're not here to
she isn't innocent.
Now, Mr. Presley, just listen to my little theory. Now, when Mrs. Gordon went to visit Chauncey on her honeymoon, Chauncey arranged with that maid to weasel her way into Mrs. Gordon's good graces so she could spy on her in her own home.
Rubbish!
Now, Mr. Presley, you've been wonderfully patient. Just bear with me a bit longer and consider it. Consider the maid's motives and Chauncey's motives. Well, shouldn't it at least be examined into? Isn't it illuminating?
Stop talking to me. I don't want to hear another word. I don't believe it, and neither do you. No one would send an innocent person to their death for money.
Wouldn't send innocent people to death for money? Who are you fooling? Wouldn't do it? You're a joke.
Stop it. I don't want to talk to you.
Husbands bumping off their wives for what they've got?
Let me alone. I don't want to talk to you.
Nurses slipping poison into rich old men and getting paid for it?
Let me alone.
Wouldn't do it? Listen. If you don't keep holding it here, I could kill you for nothing and like it.